Hello and welcome to For Fox's Sake. Rob Hayes here with you. We've got Andy and Steve on this Wednesday evening talking everything Leicester City Football Club, but deliberately a few days after the, let's call it, damaging defeat, without having to use any stronger language at this moment in time, against QPR at the weekend. So we're going to have a quick look back at that and vent a bit of frustration that maybe we or you that are listening or watching along have not yet had a chance to expel from yourselves. But the main focus of this evening is to talk fan unrest, to talk protest, to talk are they having an impact on what the owners see, hear and think? Are they having an impact on the performances on the pitch? Some people are sort of starting to think about correlating those two ideas. So we'll get through that in the next 30 to 40 minutes or so. Before we do so, for foxsake.news is our website. A reminder that subscriptions are just £5 per month. And our job, we see it at the moment, Andy and I do the bulk of the content on the website. We are both journalists. We are both have worked in professional sport for many, many years. And we are also Leicester fans. And we are trying to present our opinion, but also to canvass the opinion of the wider Leicester City fan base, and make sure that we're covering that, really. And Andy, before we get into it, we took a little bit of a bashing on Twitter this weekend for what somebody basically said that your coverage on X of the protests was a little bit derogatory, or that you were sort of trying to put it down, really. But then you started a thread that very clearly stated that we have presented every single side that we've possibly heard of this argument. So just to kick us off, really, we've got a huge amount of coverage on for foxsake.news, and I think you fought your corner well on Twitter this weekend.
Yeah, it was just, obviously I was there, I was watching it and going through what I thought I saw when I was there. And yeah, whether it came across as slightly negative, it maybe did so. And obviously, in hindsight, when you look back at it, it might have done so. It was like we've always said on For Fox's Sake, we try and keep a balance of it. I think we've all got different opinions, and that's the thing. When there's three of us that all have different opinions, we have to probably toe the line of, let's keep the balance for a start. But I'm sure your opinion might be different to mine, as is Pete's. So yeah, it was just obviously reporting what I thought I saw, and then yeah, I felt I needed to defend what we put, kind of thing. But yeah, emotions are running high, aren't they? So I can understand everything that's going on at the minute.
Absolutely. Three opinions in terms of the directorship at For Fox's Sake, myself, Andy and Pete Selby, but then several more opinions on our shows in terms of regular guests. And we're delighted to have a new guest who is doing the rounds of the Leicester podcasts, let's say, shall we, Steve? Good evening to you. Thank you very much for selecting us as your next port of call. We were talking just before we went live about what it feels like to be a Leicester City fan at the minute. How did it feel at 3-1 down at the King Power on Saturday for you?
Well, same old, really. It was a bit depressing, but at this point, we're so used to it that I think I just went home and was like, cool, let's crack on with the rest of the day. I did release a video afterwards talking about the protests and bits and pieces, but I think overall, it's just a bit heartbreaking, isn't it? Seeing the soul being ripped out your football club by the divide in the fan base, the players on the pitch, the ownership, and everything else. Yeah, it's just same old.
It is, and I think the increasing frustration is every time we get a little nugget of optimism, which Gary Rowett has in his short reign so far managed to sort of give us a little sniff of, that we didn't have for a few months before that. Then for a lot of people, it feels even worse when we come crashing back down to what we actually are this season, what we actually have been this season, which is not very good at football. Now, we had to sort of eat our words a little bit on Tuesday night because when the team sheet first came out, we gave it an absolute bashing, and that team, and then another team that came on about 25, 30 minutes to go for Leicester, essentially they got what was a good home result, clean sheet, all the things that hadn't happened for a long time happened. So when the team sheet came out on Saturday, I looked at it and went, well, I mean, it's equally as uninspiring as Tuesday, but in Rowett, we trust it worked on Tuesday night. Why wouldn't it work on Saturday? And, well, I mean, let's be honest, Andy, it didn't really work on Saturday, did it? And there's now a conversation that Rowett's having around which players can he trust to go out and implement the game plan that he clearly wants from them, that we clearly didn't see against QPR on Saturday. And I think we could probably name a few of those. But what was the sort of biggest glaring takeaway for you from Saturday's defeat to QPR?
I actually thought that we played all right for 10, 15, 20 minutes. I thought it felt a little bit like the momentum had carried over from Bristol, and I felt going 1-0 up. As soon as we got that, we'd kick on and go again like we did on the Tuesday night. But as soon as we scored, it seemed to kick us back into old nasty habits, and it was just frustrating to see. Like I say, we'd actually gone 90 minutes on against Bristol, and put the whole performance in, and then to see 20 minutes again, you're building yourself up again, and you think, oh yeah, you know what? Well, I think we might be all right here, and then obviously it just gets you again. It just grabs you just when you think you're about out of the hole. It grabs you again, and it was so frustrating. And like you say, after that first 15, 20 minutes, there wasn't Mavididi aside. I think quite a few people have said Mavididi was fairly okay. Skip was fairly okay, but obviously then got hauled off in the second half. But other than that, it was just mistake after mistake, and so the goals were just criminal. They really were. I remember a ball over the top on Sunday morning football, things like that, and getting caught out like that. That shouldn't be done by professional footballers who are on a massive wedge. That they should be knowing better than that. So yeah, just frustrating all around, and you come away from it so deflated. And yeah, what more can you do? It's just same old, same old.
It is, and Steve, Ben Nelson was obviously at fault for the first one, scored in the wrong end for the second one, but I don't think anybody's going to come here tonight, either on this show or if those people that are commenting and watching along live, I don't think anyone's going to come and bash Ben Nelson, because he's been he's been one of the very few brighter lights this season to see somebody coming through the academy, establishing himself as a good, solid championship player who deserves to have probably better around him to help with his development. Someone like Skip, Skip only really works in a team that is also doing its job, because he does the job of like 1.5 players anyway. So if everybody else around him's falling way below 100%, he can't pick up the slack for everybody. I'm interested, Steve, before we get into the protests, it's the fragility of the team that is the most frustrating, isn't it? And I think part of the division amongst the fans this season, yes, it's do you protest or do you not? Are you king power in, are you king power out? But ultimately, a lot of fans feel like other supporters aren't giving enough in terms of creating atmosphere at the game. But the atmosphere was absolutely spot on Tuesday night, because the performance mirrored that. And to begin with, on Saturday, when the performance warranted it, the atmosphere was pretty decent. But people were trying still, even when they could see that Leicester was struggling, trying to get behind them. But when it goes 3-1 and the body language of the players suggests that that's it, game over, why should it be any different for the fans in the stadium?
Well, no, you're very, very good point is that from where I sit in SK4, which isn't that far away from the singing section and stuff, you still hear them and everything. It did sound like there was full backing. I'm quite loud. Even in away games, you'll hear me starting songs because I've got a loud, boomy voice. And it did sound like they were getting backed. And even after QPR scored, they were still backing the lads. But after the second goal went in, I think everyone knew that was it. Because 2-1, even though we've got back into games recently, I have no confidence in this football club to get back into football matches anymore. And I think when the third goal went in, where you see the almost you'd say sort of 40% of the stadium started leaving, because why would they stick around when they're 3-1 down? You know they're not going to get back into the game. And at that point, yeah, like as I say, get behind the lads, and we have got behind the lads when needed to. Like away games, I go to a lot of them Tuesday night and Saturday, and we'll continue to do so. But it's a chicken and egg, isn't it? People talk about, should you create the atmosphere to get the players going, or should the players get the fans going? It's a bit of both. You know, if the fans are doing it and the players aren't, you know, doing it back, then the fans are going to stop. Why would they put the effort in? So, yes, it's really annoying to just see the club and the players just give up after because I know we saved the penalty on Tuesday night, but there is no doubt in my mind that if they scored that penalty on Tuesday, we would have drawn the game, if not lost the game, because the heads just go. And it's happened for 18 months, and that's just the outlook of the football club and the squad itself. There's just no confidence at all.
Yeah, correct. Let's move off the pitch for a little while then. Say hello to a few people that are watching along live. Evening to Ben Richo, says hello lads. Ben Richo, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Nice to see a fellow Leicester City podcast joining in as well. Blue tinted glasses saying, who's that stranger on the right? Not a stranger to any Leicester podcast, bar one that shall not be named. The game on Saturday was preceded by the second protest organised by the Unite for Change group. I was at the first one for Fox's Sake. Andy, you were at the second one. We touched upon it briefly at the top of the show, but just tell us your thoughts on, first of all, just sort of factually, you were there. What did you see? What did you experience?
Yeah,
I mean, overall. Oh, sorry, Andy, you go. Sorry. I thought you were talking to me. Andy, you go.
We'll go to you next, Steve. Don't you worry.
just from my point of view, obviously, I went there, sat on the bench. I think I saw Steve and I saw a couple of lads from Big Strong Leicester Boys podcast. They were there as well. Jason Bourne was there. And it's just obviously I was there to observe more than anything, because I'm not quite at that part where I'm happy to be protesting kind of thing. I'm not far away from it, if you know what I mean. And that was my observations. Well, that's why I asked Steve to come on, because I wanted to see what his thoughts were on the second of the protest, mainly because from what you were telling me about the first one, Rob, it was better attended. I didn't feel that this one was well attended as what you told me the first one was. It felt quite tame and quite limp. I followed it all the way up. There was obviously plenty of chanting and things like that going on, and for me, it was just about trying to work out where fans are with this, because I sat like I say, I followed it. I was at the front of it, I was at the behind of it, and I heard a lot of comments, mainly negative towards the protest, and that's why, again, like I say, I wanted Steve to come on and just see what his point of view were. There were the odd one with there going around saying, "Oh, I understand why it's being done," things like that, but then there was a lot of negative comments. So it's just the split fan base, isn't it? And that's the thing with it. And it's, if we're going to get people behind it, and like I say, I'm not far away from being behind it. I want to be able to join something that I think's going to make a difference, and I'm not quite there with it yet. I mean, I'm a historian as well, in my job kind of thing. So I always look back at the history side of things, and I look back at what the family have done for us as King Power kind of thing. And it's hard when they've done so much for the club, but then you look at where we are today and it's chalk and cheese. So it's just, I don't want to rant, because I'm not quite sure what my thoughts are kind of thing. It's one of them. I brought Steve on to probably try and almost give me an idea of where I should go with it, because I want to back it to a degree. I think it's time King Power moved on, although again, I think there were a couple of areas where if Top did a few different things, I think he could win a lot back as well. But I'm possibly quite naive there, maybe in the minority, certainly from the vocal group that are in and around social media. So yeah, it was one of them for me. I was just a little bit disappointed with it, and I probably wanted it to be a bit more bigger, work a bit more, so I could get behind it. But it wasn't quite there.
Steve, what was your experience of Saturday?
In all honesty, yeah, if you look at the numbers, it was disappointing, but we expected that after the win on Tuesday, because if we'd lost, there probably would have been more numbers. I just want to first out say that these are all my opinions. I know I'm on the board of the Foxes Trust, but this is all down to me. So don't try and say, "Oh, the Foxes Trust." No, it's all my opinions. So I think the main issue is, and I speak to a lot of people around me. I'm quite a sort of over the top, boisterous person. I'll go and talk to people and stuff, and a lot of them would join the protest, but they're worried they'll get banned, which is a sad state of affairs of the football club, where you think you can't give your opinion on stuff because you're worried about losing your season ticket or not being able to go to games anymore. So there's that to look at. But I think overall the protest is a start. It's only the second week. The first one in the Premier League against Arsenal was a damp squib. I'll be honest with you, the way that it walked down the road, it got separated at the junction, and then it went one way around the stadium. This one's a lot better organised. And I think as time goes on, there will be more people going. But on your point, Andy, about like the ownership, I think if in November he said, look, we're going to replace John in 3 or 4 months' time with somebody else. We're going to move John away from the club, do something. The ownership would be getting plaudits and giving a lot more time. I think a lot of the people would be like, okay, he's making change. Let's give him a year, give him 18 months, see what happens. But that hasn't happened. We've promoted John Rudkin to a higher level at the football club. We've said, here's failure. Congratulations, John. You've done a really good job of taking this once proud Premier League football club into potentially League One. Here's a promotion. We've got somebody working underneath you who, still have to report to you. And then the CEO, which I actually think is a decent appointment, all things considered. So, yeah, my overall thought of I will get more into the protest itself, but yes, it was disappointing with the numbers. But I think as time goes on, there will be more and more people joining, because look, I actually think we are going to be in League One. And I think once that relegation is confirmed, you'll see a lot more protests after games as well as before games.
Yeah, it's probably, if you've still got quite a few people on the fence, and you probably include myself and Andy on that, and not on the fence, but, not necessarily leaning super strongly towards protesting, it is probably going to take something monumentally horrific like relegation to League One to actually help people to sort of see what's going on. And there's a couple of comments coming in, and if you've got anything to say and you're watching along live, please do comment. We'll get through as many of them as we can. Deedler saying, I believe that more than 60% of the fan base does not understand why we are in this mess, and they don't care to look too deep. I think that's an interesting point, and actually maybe some people are unwilling to look any deeper and are just trying to sort of be a football fan and almost detach themselves a little bit from the organizational and the business side of things. But I do think, again, if we're talking about potential relegation to League One, that number, that 60% would probably go a lot higher. It would smack some people in the face. Paul says, good evening, Paul. Thank you for joining us. Saying we must have the most apathetic fan base in the whole football league. That comment came in about the time that we were talking about sort of a surprising lack of numbers in terms of physically at the protest on Saturday. So I'm assuming that comment is related to that. We've got Richard Houston also saying, where I'm at with it, it's a joke of a protest. A protest makes a difference. This is a damp squib, if that's the term that you like. Aggressive protest is the only way to get messages across, like it or not. So, I mean, like you said, Steve, it has to start somewhere. And on for Fox8.news, Andy and I have spoken a couple of times to spokespeople from Unite for Change, and I spoke to them between the first and the second protest and said, what did you think of the first one? What are you anticipating for the second one and any future ones going forward? And the hope, obviously, because it's a protest movement, was that the numbers would continue to build. But I think if we take a little snapshot of the opinion of our viewers this evening, it seems to be, Andy, we'll come to you first on this, Andy, that it seems to be that not that many people feel strongly enough, and probably the point that Steve made about the Bristol City win being so surprisingly good has probably lost you at least a couple of hundred protesters on Saturday.
Yeah, I think it probably did. I think it was probably the worst time for a win, if you know what I mean. Obviously, we all want wins, kind of thing, on the football side of things. But in terms of the movement, it was the worst timing for it. Just before, obviously, the protests had been planned for a while for the QPR game, so it was really bad timing that we actually pulled a finger out for once and got a result. So yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? I really took an interest in listening to the comments of people when they were marching, and it was, like I say, it was a lot. I'll just probably say 75-25 were negative. A lot of the 25% that were not negative, they were, I'm not going to do it, but I understand where they're coming from with it. And that's probably where I am at the minute. I'm probably in that 25%. I understand why why they're doing it, and where they are at. But then you've got, like I say, the rest of the 75% that are buried their head in the sands. I don't know whether that's a correct comment. I don't know whether I'm just being nasty to people there. I don't know. Have people buried their heads in the sand, or is it that it's just a football match at the end of the day, and they can detach the two things, and if we end up going down, we end up going down. I don't think it's disastrous if we go. It is disastrous, but not disastrous if we go down, kind of thing. I've never felt that our existence will be threatened by going down. I don't think the Football League would allow a club like us to go out of business, and I think we're quite an attractive proposition to potential buyers if it ever went that way. So I don't feel like that. But yeah, there are a lot that just do not care about the way that we are, and it's trying to get my head around, where do I sit in all this, and where do I want the club to go, and what do I want to see from the club? Because, like I said earlier, I do have an affinity for the ownership. They bought us so much and they've done so much for us, but it can't continue the way it is. Simple as that. And it's something that's got to change. Simple as that.
Yeah, it's Steve. We'll bring you in on that one in terms of the fact that there are, like we say, probably a lot of people who are mainly focused on the football and try to sort of ignore what's going on upstairs as best they can. But ultimately, we could be in a situation. I know Andy said there that he doesn't think it's going to happen, and that there are a lot of conversations around the financial effects of relegation, in terms of the fan base then starts to become even more divided. You get even fewer people attending matches. I guess from your point of view, you were also sitting and working with the Foxes Trust, so you know what conversations go on between the club and the fan groups and stuff. Just how much of a difference do you think, not necessarily the two protests that have happened, but the protest movement overall, especially if it starts to gather pace, do you think it can make a difference? I presume you must do, because you've taken part in it.
I'd like to think so, but in all honesty, Top's not in the country long enough to even care. I think he's too busy wrapped up in doing whatever else he's doing, and that's fine. He's a billionaire. He can go and do what he likes. He wants to play polo, then fine. But I think that everyone else is a bit worried. I think John Rudkin's worried about it, because there's several points here that I'm going to make in a sort of a quick time to come back at Andy and other bits and pieces. First of all, in regards to the club going out of business, I am worried. I'm not thinking we are, but the tourist industry in Thailand is taking a massive hit because Chinese tourists don't go to Thailand anymore. So King Power are already in financial issues there, so much so they've had to restructure a deal with the government or whoever else who got the loan out of during COVID, and Top's moved aside for somebody else to come in that has more of an expertise on it. The financial revenue cut from the Championship to League One is significant. Whilst we'll have £36 million or thereabouts from parachute payments coming into the club, by rough estimates, the stadium and the training ground cost about £26 million there or thereabouts to run every year. So you can wipe off the potential parachute payments. You got £10 million roughly. There's about 500 employees at the football club. Now, realistically speaking, if you go down to League One, you're probably going to lose 15 to 20% of that. to cut costs. You're going to have to shut down pitches to save money as well. Sell off any potential assets you've got that will make you money, because the rules in the League One are different to the Championship. You spend, for every £100 you earn, you can spend £60 of it on wages, effectively. And whilst we've got loads of players going out the door, you're going to have to replace 13, 14 players potentially to come into the football club. They all are going to take signing on fees, etc. So there's loads of money that's going to be floating around that's going to go straight out the door. My main issue is if Top says at the end of the day, I just can't, I don't want to do it anymore. If we stay in League One for a couple of seasons and he says, I'm not bothered anymore, then we could really be in trouble. And then we're looking for an owner and to sell in the club. For me, the whole point of the protest is that whilst I'm never going to have kids, I'm not interested in having kids. My wife's the same, and there are people around me that don't want kids. I want there to be a football club for the future generation. I want there to be a football club for my mate Dan's child and his grandchildren and that sort of thing. So I'd rather be wrong about the future of the football club and say, fair enough, I got it wrong. We all make mistakes. Then be right and say, I did see it was coming. I've been shouting from the rooftops, and I think a lot of the people on the protest are worried that there might not be a football club in 5 to 10 years' time because of this situation. Now, everyone's opinion is valid. I will say that nobody's opinion is better than my opinion. I would like to have a debate with people that aren't on the same page as me, because I could learn a lot. I'll happily change my opinion if I get given the right information. I'm not burying my head in the sand. I'm not definitely, this is how I want to be. You should be following what I'm doing, because that's not how it should be. The whole point of this movement is that you gradually pick more and more fans up, and it does make a difference long term. But season ticket prices, what are they going to be like in League One next year? You're going to lose a lot of the season ticket prices, season ticket holders, sorry, because a lot of them are going to cancel. And if you've got somebody working for the club, I've got a friend who works for the club, and his dad's against the protest. But if his child lost his job because we got relegated, who's he going to blame? Because it's not the fans that are the issue there. It's the owners, surely, that's made these decisions. And I just think there's no accountability overall. There's a lot of information that I've spewed out there. But if you look at the fact that we've promoted the person that caused the majority of the issues, you've got Top, who takes his eye off the ball quite a lot. He's only here occasionally. I don't know if he knows what happens on a day-to-day basis at the football club. Judging by some of the conversations I've heard, he's not aware of a lot of things. He's not interested, really. So you leave it to John, and I don't know what John does on a daily basis. It'd be nice to know what his remit is now in his new role. That would be quite nice to actually work out what he does. But if you take the people out of the room that are causing the issues and you replace them with new people with fresh ideas, a lot of this wouldn't be happening. We'd all be like, okay, we're going to get relegated for the second time in our history. The first ever points deduction at the football club, the PSR mismanagement, the overspending on wages that we can't get rid of, and player-wise. You give Luke Thomas a 4-year deal, which sounds good on paper when you first give it to him, but now we're going to be in League One and he's on 40-odd grand a week. You've got Vestergaard that's still at the club next year on whatever he's on, because I don't know if you've got additional relegation, like wage lowering clauses going down. Harry Winks is here for another year because of the trigger in his contract for getting promoted. But Bobby De Coverreed's going to be here. So realistically, the skeleton of the squad is going to be the same players that are here now, that are on over too much money, that don't care. And I just think next year is going to be shit. I'm not I swear, it's going to be rubbish or bust.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, it's a lot of information. I just spouted out there.
No. I appreciate it. You're getting some likes on the comments as well. Let's just take a few from the viewers. Thomas saying no relegation clauses, loss of parachute payments, cost of running the club and the training ground. I think that's meant to say it's impossible not to be liquidated if we go down. It's probably not quite that bad, but we take the sort of broader point that it will put the club under even more strain than it is. And you've made the point there, Steve, about King Power's struggles in their home country of Thailand at the moment. If Leicester as Leicester City as a football club, as an entity, as a business, is not generating as much cash as it should be, because we shouldn't be in League One, let's say worst comes to worst, then you've got huge financial pressures on two big parts of your business. Deedler saying, why after the last 5 years do you, I think referring to you as in a fan base, do you not know where you are with the way this club has been run? And referencing Andy's earlier point that he doesn't think the Football League will allow Leicester to be liquidated, to be non-existent anymore. Deedless is asking, what does the Football League care if we become extinct?
Also, I just forgot to mention as well, if if we go down, obviously the women's team are going to go down as well by the looks of it. Are we committing to spending the £4.5 million a year to keep the women's team? Will that have to go as well? And then you're affecting a whole other side of the fan base that also are going through a lot of poor choices at the moment. Like if you've seen the game at the weekend where two players one of them was the captain, was walking off the pitch crying her eyes out to her mum. It's just I don't know if the women's team's going to be there. There's going to be loads of people losing their jobs in this situation. Sorry, I'll shut up.
No. I totally take the point. And again, if we're talking about that, then I think that the transfers that Leicester women made in January did prove that Leicester as a club were willing to put some financial backing into them. And the way the WSL works this season is if you finish bottom, you're in a relegation playoff against third place in WSL 2, whether you go up or not. But that's a massive lottery. And Leicester's defeat to Liverpool at the weekend has not done them any favours. It was Leicester 12th, Liverpool 11th, and Liverpool won 2-0. So big sort of 6 games left for Leicester women. But you're absolutely right. The relegation of the men's team will also have a knock-on effect on the women's team, on the age groups as well, because ultimately, yes, you've got this world-class training facility, but you've got to have the funds to keep running it. And if you're putting all of that into it, and the product that you're getting out, which is essentially the first team footballers, and they are not generating the cash that you want them to, then as a business model, it's in quite a big spot of bother, because you're having to funnel loads of money into the training ground. And what are you getting out of it? Nothing that's actually going to be making you any money, really. Interesting. So I think one of the things that maybe has put a few people off protesting is probably the recent-ish announcements of the evolved leadership structure that we've touched upon, with Jon Rudkin moving up a little bit. And we've got a new sporting director coming in, new CEO. Now, Steve, do you touched upon it earlier? I just wanted your thoughts a little bit more. Do you think that for you, but also for other fans, is enough evidence that King Power, that Jon Rudkin are looking at this, are hearing what the fans are saying, and are going, okay, here are the changes. We recognize it, because they've been harping on now for a little while about accountability. They've talked about internal reviews. We've got the minutes published from the most recent FCC working group meeting that happened a couple of months ago. The minutes were published today. Generally speaking, do you get the sense that Top and King Power and the ownership are doing enough to identify what's gone wrong and rectify it? And do you see a way of them turning this around?
Well, I would say, first of all, the appointment of Kevin as CEO is good, but also at the same time worrying, because if you read the court case that came out with the points deduction and stuff, that it was a very long page. I won't recommend it. It's not very good reading. I'll be honest, it's quite boring. But there's a bit in that section where he was saying, he pointed out all of these issues in June, the first time we got relegated from the Premier League, and then again in January that same year. Now, he wasn't CEO at the time, so he was manager. He was financial director or financial manager or something like that. So if he's pointing out the issues and nobody's listening to him, you've just taken the job full time. Are they going to listen to you full time when you're in the role? I mean, you have to. He's going to be on the board, so it's a legal role and stuff. So you'd like to think so. But if they ignored him then, when he was basically standing on the ship of the Titanic, pointing out the iceberg, saying, "Look, guys, it's there," and they go, "It's fine. We'll carry on partying and drinking," then that's not a good look. In regards to the technical director, I think that you have to give him time. I don't think you can compare to what he did at Lommel, because it's a completely different role. He's well connected in the City group. He'll know a lot of players that have come out of the academies at Man City and everywhere else around the world. So I think he'd be a decent appointment. But the main issue, and it's the one that everybody talks about, is Mr. Rudkin. What is his role in this? Will the new director have to go to him to get things signed off? And if you listen to what Enzo said about him a few weeks ago, about like he rang him during and you couldn't get hold of him half the time. What's he doing? I think they're trying to move things around, and I think they're trying to make positive change. But if you cut around the infection, but you leave the infection in there, it's going to come back, and it's going to come back worse. And I just think that if he had just said to John, look, mate, we're going to phase you out over the next 3 or 4 months. Appreciate what you've done. You've been here for a very long time. Here, go and look after some racehorses. There's some sugar cubes over there. Just go over there for a little bit. I think a lot of fans would be like, you know what, Top, fair enough. You're making the decisions that need to be done. You're accepting that there was failures at the football club, and you're trying to bring in new people to give you that help. But it hasn't happened. So you can change all of the chairs around the Titanic if you want to. But if you keep the captain in charge, we're still going to hit the Titanic, the iceberg, not the Titanic.
Yeah, Paul agreeing with you there, saying it's basically like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic and sharing your concern that everything still goes through Rudkin. And that is a name that, I mean, rightly or wrongly, how much of a role he's had in Leicester's demise in the last few years. He has become almost not necessarily the scapegoat, but he has become sort of the one name that people would probably, if they were King Power out, would probably, if he'd have gone out and like you say, been moved to one side, would have maybe got back on side with Top. Because I think, Andy, and maybe we should finish on this unless anybody, either of you two, have got anything more pressing to discuss. There is still somehow some goodwill towards the family, towards King Power Group, because of this amazing journey that we have been on. But the amazing journey that culminated in winning the Premier League was now 10 years ago. We can't live in the past, surely. Is there any way, Andy, for you, that King Power can stay in charge, that Top can stay in charge whilst John Rudkin is still at the club?
No, I don't think. I think that's the one thing I'm clear on. I think whilst Rudkin is there, then it points me towards, obviously, the King Power should move on and say thank you very much. We appreciate everything you've done for us, but it's now time for something a bit different. Like I say, if Rudkin was to be moved aside, as Steve said, and said thank you, go and look after some horses in Thailand, like he said, then there is a way back for me, but it needs a bit of proper experience, if you know what I mean. A proper football person on the sidelines who knows what they're doing. I don't know much about this McCarran. Like Steve said, we know that it's a different game in Belgium, and we know that he's well connected within the City Group and all that. But I just don't know anything about it now. If someone like a Dougie Friedman or a Dan Ashworth would have come in, obviously they wouldn't, because we're not in that caliber of teams anymore. Then I'll be thinking to myself, you know what? He knows that things have gone wrong and things need to change, but he hasn't, and he can't do that. So, like I said, I am edging towards, like I say, the King Power needs to move on. I just, for me, like we said, we talked about the protest. I don't think that's worked as yet, and Steve's right. It's early days, and maybe it's something. And Steve gave me a lot of points to think about tonight, so I appreciate that, Steve. And it's something for me to think about, because I'm nearly there, and I'm just trying to find a way of getting there completely and backing everything that we do. But yeah, with Top, he is very, very naive. Clearly, he doesn't know what's going on. He's allowing things to happen, and for some reason, he's got this affinity with Mr. Rudkin, and I'd love to know, and I'm sure everybody would love to know, just what the affinity is that keeps it into position in the state that we are in as a club. So for me, there is a slight way back, but it's harder to get there without some serious movement. And like Steve said again, it's a lot of the changes have been positive on the whole, but the infection is still there.
Can I just jump in really quickly? I just want to say that, look, I find it very hard to have a go at Top as a human being, because losing your dad at a place you have to visit every couple of weeks is going to be hard. Like on a human level, it's very sad. I've got no ill will towards Top or the family or anything like that. And if he could turn it around, I'd be the first to say, look, guys, I appreciate you've all pointed out I was wrong. I hold my hands up. Perfect. But if you were to separate the ownership into two halves, and you go, if this was a new owner, that after Vishal died and you brought a new owner in, and he'd done all of this, even after winning the FA Cup, a lot of people would be like, that's not good enough. Why are we backing this person? You know, the fact that we're going to have 3 relegations in 5 years is mind-blowing to me in a sense. But I also understand that he probably doesn't want to visit the club every other week, you know. But if that is the case, then bring somebody else in charge that can do it. Step aside, bring somebody else in to run the club for you. I think also if he did that, then most people are like, fair enough. Again, he realizes he can't do it all. He can go and play polo or whatever he wants to do because he's got a family. So, you know, he's got other things to worry about. And we're not the priority in his life. But if you're not going to do it, if you're not going to be in 100%, because this is a community, this is a lot of people's worlds that you're in here. You know, if Leicester lose, I'm lucky. I've got a lot of things in my life where Leicester isn't the only thing that I rely on for my mental health. I've got a lot of things. But there are people in the world that just rely on Leicester as an escape. And if you're ruining that for people that will never come back to the football club, then you need to take a look in the mirror and say, okay, maybe I need to sell up for the good of the city more than anything, because we don't want to be a Phoenix club. We want to be here in 10th, even if it's in the Championship. I don't think people really care about the Premier League. I don't care about the Premier League. It's one of the worst leagues in the world this season, you know, and I don't like VAR, but I just want there to be a football club for me to go and watch every year and get every week and get annoyed at. That's it. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be sad. I just want to be annoyed. Just let me be annoyed.
Yeah, and you'd be way more than annoyed if the football club disappeared.
Exactly.
I just want to finish on one point because it's been raised on the comments, and we do say that pretty much whatever you comment, we will discuss within reason. And it's coming from Paul, and I want to sort of turn it into a sort of forward-thinking question rather than directly answering it, if that's all right, Paul. He's saying, have any of you ever heard Rudkin speak? If he explained the many errors, shall we say, the many mistakes, there would be a bit more understanding from fans. And I think that's probably the way that we can finish the conversation, in the fact that yes, there are the fan advisory boards, the working groups, but I would suggest, without any stats to back it up, but I would suggest there's quite a large number of, or quite a large percentage of the fan base that wouldn't feel like their voice could be heard at a gathering like that wouldn't necessarily feel represented by that kind of conversation, that kind of summit, if you like. So we're left with, because as Paul just said there's very little communication directly from the club in terms of owning decisions, saying we made this decision for this reason, this didn't work out, this is what we've done to try and rectify that. There's very, very little, if any, of that ever comes out of the club, really. And when everything was going absolutely plain sailing and we were in those dizzy heights of 10 years ago, you know what, do I really care about the day-to-day running of the football club? No, I don't. But people need to be held accountable for that. And I guess, Steve, the final point really is, where does the protest movement go next? Where do the Foxes Trust that you are a part of go next in a bid to once and for all try to communicate the fans' frustration to the club, and try to sort of, as they always have done, the Foxes Trust, try to bridge that gap between club and fans? Where do we go from here, really?
So I would say, in regards to the Foxes Trust, there is open dialogue between the trust and the club, but a lot of it gets put through the FAB. So we have a representation on the board. That's Becky Taylor, who's on Twitter and stuff. So if you have any questions, they can be raised to the trust and we can put that to the club. You might not get an answer because sometimes we don't get answers for the questions that we asked, but it's always worth getting in contact with the Foxes Trust, becoming a member as well. Like, you know, we at the moment it's a discounted rate. I think it's £5 for the year, and you get voting rights and stuff. But it means that you can have a say in the surveys that we're doing. You know, the poll surveys to direct the trust in which way you want to go. And yes, okay, I've just got elected. There are other people that got elected under the Reform banner, but I made it very clear in my statement that I want to be a trust board member for every fan. Like, I speak to all different opinions of football matches. You know, I've got people come up to me that don't agree with me, that have called me every name under the sun. And that's fine, because I can still have a conversation with you. You know, if you don't talk to me, then I don't know what your opinion is, and I can't hear what you're saying. So if you don't agree with me, come and have a chat with me. If you see me at football, come and say hello. I won't bite, won't shout at you. Quite a lot of the time, you'll see me and hear me because I'm quite loud at the stadium itself. So, yeah, you know, just just come and have a chat. And there is we have an end of season survey coming up in the next the end of this month. I believe we're doing it. Swansea game, I think, is the first game. We're going to be sort of walking around with leaflets and getting people to it. So I would suggest filling out the survey. That will go directly to the club. The club will see the results and see where the fans are, and that will cover not just the ownership, that will cover the food in the stadium, the atmosphere, the entertainment, everything. So yeah, there is a vessel for you to have that conversation with the football club. Just come and talk to me. Send me a message on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. Maybe not Facebook because I haven't really gone there very often, but Instagram, Twitter, everywhere else, or even at the ground. I don't bite.
Bark is worse than the bite, shall we say? Andy, Steve, thank you very much for joining us this evening. And thank you to everybody that's watched along live. Quite a lot of you and lots of great comments as well. And that is essentially what For Fox's Sake is here for. We're a fan platform. We are here to give our opinion on things, but also very much to take the opinions of those who listen to the podcast in its purest form. We would like to say, those of you that watch along and those of you that subscribe to our website as well, forfoxsake.news. If you've not heard of us before, you've not had a look at the website, please do. Just a £5 a month to subscribe, and what you get on that is content from myself and Andy, who are sports journalists who also happen to unluckily be Leicester fans at the same time. So we're sort of combining both of our passions, if you like, on there. Plenty of stuff on the protests already, plenty more will come, and we are, as we say, trying to make sure that we take on board everybody's opinion. In terms of what's coming up for Fox's Sake, in terms of shows later on this week, we'll of course be previewing both the upcoming games for the men's team and the women's team. So look out for those on our socials for Fox's Sake. And for foxsake.news, you'll find out when we are next on. Andy, Steve, thank you very much. Thank you to everybody for watching and listening. We'll catch you again soon.